Welcome to Level Up Quest. I have Michelle Itzy right here with me, where she is a tech enthusiast, where she knows how to implement her tech stack with an accounting firm. So, Michelle here, she's going to talk about Tax Dome, especially the biggest issue that I see with people who first sign up with any type of software is they like the software, they just don't know whether they're implementing it correctly. And Michelle here, she's going to talk about how we're going to implement TaxDome correctly from the beginning. So, Michelle, welcome to Level Up Quest. I'm going to have you take it from here and walk us through kind of like the first order of what people should be looking out for when it comes to TaxDome.
Well, thanks, Fook. We've gone through and implemented several different software. However, I've noticed repeatedly you get your software package. In this case, we're talking about TaxDome. You go through all of the motions. The guidance team, the implementation team come in. They offer a lot of advice. You're very much inundated with information. And then after they've left, what now? Where do they go? So we're going to do this based off of what hierarchy of needs is. Basically, the organizers. TaxDome has been sold and told so many people about how fabulous their organizers are, and they are absolutely fabulous. And their organizer is put into their portal. It is not something that's a PDF, yet again, for your clients to have to sit there and fill out. It is truly a dynamic invention. So you've had your implementation, you've owned your package. It's almost a year out. For some people, it's going into their second year, and they simply have not fully implemented everything. Tax preparers, we are great with taxes. If you ask us a tax law, we know tax law. However, we aren't really the people that we don't go through a lot of training for policies and procedures and workflows and implementation. Now, if you ask us about the IRS, we can tell you everything about the IRS. It's very much knowing how our office flows and how our workflow is. And it's not a cookie cutter thing that you can stamp and just one size fits all.
Exactly. Yeah. Talking about that, you're talking about the flow and how important it is to understand the flow. Maybe when taxes weren't so complicated and firms weren't growing with employees and stuff, it might have been a little easier. But now when we add, we have admin assistants, we have front desk, we have junior preparers, senior preparers, reviewers. There's so many steps that go into it. And getting that flow right is really complicated unless you have technology to actually help you walk through it and make it automated, how you mentioned.
Well, and then the software manufacturers as a whole, whenever you are paying somebody to learn software and at that higher level, you typically see more firms offering it to a certain fraction of the team, and it's supposed to be a trickle down education. But whenever someone doesn't fully understand, because so much data is brought in at once, when that person doesn't understand it, how can they share it with others?
That's true. That's true. Because I haven't worked with TaxStone personally. I worked with Carbon, but that exactly what you said. The salespeople and the onboarding people, they talk to me, and I had to understand it first. And then, in a way, I had to trickle it down to my employees and train them based off what I thought was the right way.
Well, and you have to walk a fine line because you want to make sure that you're being business savvy and teaching your staff to do it the way you want. But you also want to make sure that your valuable time is not tied up with teaching your staff how to use a product that is supposed to, for all intents and purposes, supposed to be able to run itself.
Correct.
This automation, AI, we're hearing it everywhere, but how do you actually implement it? What makes the most sense?
Correct. Yeah. So, and then today you're going to be talking about organizers. That's kind of like the first step, right? Like for most tax offices, it's just setting up this organizer on how to make it easy. Because like how you said, the old school way was paper. I remember mailing out 500 organizers before to clients by paper, and only 1% actually used it and filled it out.
The average accounting firm, if you have been in business before COVID, they remember how painful the paper organizers were because you're paying by weight for a lot of these
Yeah.
organizers. And some of the tax software organizers wind up being 5 to 10 pages.
Mm-hmm.
And not all of it applies to your client. If your client is simply a W-2, unless your software is trained, it doesn't know. Don't send out a Schedule C business organizer. Or if you go along the lines of everybody is a W-2 employee or just uses what we commonly hear of as government forms, then you're missing the non-government forms, that farm organizer, the investment organizer, the organizer for your rental properties, for Schedule Cs. And this organizer really is a learning organizer. It adapts as you grow.
And this is when you talk about learning organizer, this is through TaxDome and it's all online, right? So no more paper organizers. It's very customized to the actual client.
And this is a wonderful tool because you're not working off of a PDF. A lot of people since COVID have started using a PDF, which is wonderful because you can sit there at your computer and type this in. This is a dynamic organizer that resides in your client's portal. Your client can take a few minutes to answer a few questions when they're at the dentist office waiting in the lobby. If they are out and about, they can grab a few minutes here, a few minutes there, and really work to make this organizer completed on their time schedule. So if they leave, it remembers where you were.
Which is nice. And also, when you say organizer, are you talking about it's like a questionnaire with like basic things like what's new, maybe new dependent, new address, like the basic questionnaire stuff, but also it allows them to upload their documents, or are they filling out the actual numbers inside that organizer?
It's basically able to be built however you want. For one firm I've worked with recently, all the government forms, and when I refer to a government form, it is a form that is issued by the IRS that is completed by a person and sent to you, whether it be your investment broker with a 1099 dividend or a 1099 interest statement or a W-2. So that's when I refer to government forms, it's those standard issued forms. You can have it that way, or you could actually have where you ask your client, did you work for a company? And if so, what companies did you work for this year? And have them answer, and then immediately have a place to upload that document.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So which method do you think is better or more efficient?
Whatever works for your workflow. You've worked with your clients, you've trained your clients, you know what your clients are used to doing. And I find that whatever works for you, but when I say you, it needs to be a firm-wide framework. A lot of companies that have problems with implementation of a workflow provider such as Carbon Canopy or TaxDome, they don't have those processes in place to begin with, or the partners cannot agree on it. So if you have I don't want to call them quality control, but because I feel like that's really an audit thing. But if you have a agreed upon procedure in your firm, a way that you are used to everybody working, you know that someone is going to walk in the door and bring information or email you information, and that's going to trigger your entire workflow. That's how do you start a tax return? A client brings in that information. So this organizer can be built to work with you and meet you where you are. But it also can be used to guide your clients to where you want to be.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And what I mean by that is a lot of clients, they send information in, and they will send in information, an email here, drop something by the office here, and then they remember and they'll all of a sudden upload stuff to their portal in June. And it's not really a disorganization on the client, it's a matter of when they receive the documents is when they upload it. So let's go to the beginning. Why do organizers fail? I really feel like organizers fail. It's not because you did anything wrong, but it's because you're asking the wrong questions. If you have a one size fits all organizer and you're sending it out to every single client, they're going to shut down at a certain point. They're not going to want to answer any more questions about IRAs if they have no IRAs. They're not going to want to talk about investments if they have not started with investing yet. Mm-hmm. And that's where that's the beauty of this particular organizer. It's a decision tree organizer. I don't know if you've ever worked in sports or had someone in Little League where they have the organizational brackets where this team, whichever team answers, it goes to here. Or a lot of our workflows when Qubit came out, people had a workflow that was a decision tree as to if this is yes, then go here. If no, then go here. That is how TaxDome really sets themselves apart. These are organizers that actually think for you. So it lets the clients bypass some of the sections that don't apply to them. But when something does apply to them, it asks further queries to get your client's information that you really need.
Mm. So, for example, if they're answering the questionnaire saying, oh, did you have a business? And if they select no, it won't ask any more business questions. It won't ask about home office or mileage. But they said yes, then more things will pop up like, okay, upload 1099s or provide home office information,
a great one
mileage.
That a lot of people that don't just do taxes, but if you have a tax and bookkeeping service, a great question is, did your company provide services where you would have to issue 1099s? Mm-hmm. If they say no, then they're done. But if they say yes, did you actually prepare those 1099s? If they say yes, can you provide a copy to us of the 1099s? And then have a space to upload that document. And you can make it mandatory or you can make it optional, depending on what your needs are. However, if they said no, they haven't prepared them, that's whenever it can drill further and say, would you like us to prepare the 1099s for you? And if they say yes, then you can send out information for them to fill that out. And therefore, just through that one question, you were able to ascertain and add another service that you're able to provide for that client. And the other part is that it also adds a tag. So next year, you'll know that 1099 needs to be done. So when you're nearing the end of the year, you can run a report and pull the tags with that 1099 prep and know that you need to contact that client to prepare for them. And it lets the client know that you are listening to what questions that they have. You're providing answers they didn't even know they needed.
Yeah. Okay. So kind of to recap, with the TaxDome organizers, instead of a cookie cutter organizer that everyone gets, where it just might be inundated with a bunch of random questions that won't even relate to most of the clients, through TaxDome, you're able to set it up where they call it, I guess, dynamic, where if they answer a certain question a certain way, then it leads to a different decision tree where they would follow up with more questions that relates to them because they said, yes, I have a Schedule C, or yes, I need to file 1099s. So you mentioned, so that's one thing about the TaxDome organizers that makes it special, is that because it is dynamic and it will be specific relating to the client itself. Now you mentioned tags. What does tags mean?
Well, with the organizer, while they're filling this out, if they say, I have a Schedule C business, and you put that Schedule C tag, it's just like whenever you use software like Photoshop and you tag your photo as a personal photo. So tags are similar to hashtags. If you've ever used social media and you went through and thought, I'd like to know more about this topic, and you click on that that hashtag in social media, it will bring you a lot of posts that have that information on it.
Mm.
This is a this is an item that you're able to filter information through TaxDome to be able to identify accounts that meet these circumstances. I recommend setting up your tags in a way that works for you, but definitely put the types of businesses. Is this a Schedule C business? Is this an S Corp? Is this a partnership? 1120. That way, when the tax laws change, you don't have to do much to send out a client specified letter. So your clients that have a W-2 are not getting an email about Schedule E properties if they do not have any Schedule E rental properties.
Okay.
And it helps because all of this helps to improve your customer service and your customer relations. Your clients won't be inundated with 40 to 50 emails each year that do not apply to them.
Okay.
So when you're sending those comfort letters out to your client when a tax law has changed and you want to let them know that you're aware of the tax law change, they need to make some adjustments and you'll be contacting them with information. You'll be sending it to the clients that actually need that information.
Okay. And are these tags automated? So say they say, yes, they have a rental. Well, can you automate it where, because they said yes, it just tags and say, oh, Schedule E. And I'm assuming with tags, how you mentioned, that's like cash tags, where if I just want to look at everyone that has Schedule E's, then I could just click on that tag and in order to show all my clients with that.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this works really well because not only can it add the tag, but if the condition no longer applies to the client, then you can remove that tag. And that way that client won't get it. Perhaps they sell their business and at the sale, whenever you're completing it, you want to physically remove it. That's great. But then the next year, as they're filling out their organizer, if they say, do you have a Schedule C business? Then you could click no, and it will remove the tag if it's set up correctly. But all of this is that investment where if you invest the time, you'll invest a short amount of time, but you'll gain so much extra time.
Mm-hmm. I think the time part is important because you can't just buy a new software and expect it to work right away in your firm, no matter how much the seller says that it's going to be so easy to implement. But definitely you do, like how you said, to walk it through with all these different questions. I'm assuming that's not part of the default template. Like you do have to probably add more to it.
It's not, but it's also one of the reasons why I'm really advocating that people work with someone. And I do recommend start at least in June, if not a year before you're really truly wanting to implement the entire program. Take it in bites. Like this year, do the organizer. Let the organizer be built. Even if you don't fully implement all of the questions and the decision trees, get it started. Make those baby steps because then you can build it out where, yes, it will take you a little bit of extra time over this next year. But if you spend 2 hours to get back 10, I think you'll find that it's worth it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, all these softwares, they might offer a lot of different features. And just knowing all the different features can get a little overwhelming. But if you just break it down into let's work on organizers first and get that perfect, then I think that would really help at least get the ball rolling to get that one feature done and perfected before you could work on anything else after that.
Definitely. And if you do take it bite by bite, then it's not as overwhelming. And it's crazy how one thing will really help the organizer. I mean, your organizer is, you can use these not just for tax. I know today we're talking a lot about the organizers being for tax. You can actually do the organizer for as an ongoing payroll, a repetitive, or every week it asks questions and you use this to learn, did you have any new employees this week? If so, please upload this document, and this document. And that saves that back and forth email. So if you start with your organizers and get them set up kind of conversationally, like you and I are talking, don't ask your clients 50 questions. Ask them 10 really great ones that will help learn how much more you need to ask for them. Mm-hmm. If you ask them, did you have children? or dependents this year? And they answer no, then that reduces a quarter of that organizer because you're cutting out those child tax credits that
Mm-hmm.
you're cutting out a lot of the follow-up questions for education. But if you want to go through and just ask any just blanket or questions, you can make it into 50 questions.
Yeah.
I know with whenever UltraTax, which that's the one I'm most familiar with, but when UltraTax issued their tax organizer last year, it was 3 pages of questions. By organizing those in a way that were conversational, but also more focused on a decision tree, we were able to get it down to 20 really good questions that helped to answer all of the more complicated returns. And based off of that one question, you could kind of follow that down, drill down, if you will, into the answers you needed. And then it minimizes the back and forth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know you mentioned there is a way to build the organizer a smart way. Can you go into more details of one, building it the smart way, but also I want to go back to the conversational part. How do you make it more conversational as well?
Well, there's one organizer that I'm working on right now that I'm calling the conversational organizer. And it's more for a lot of the clients that I'm in Texas. And a lot of times we will talk with our clients, and our clients are more on a friendly level. So we could ask them something along the lines of, or instead of asking, are you planning to file married filing jointly or married filing separately? You could say, what did you file last year? And then they answer single, or they answered married filing separately. Then the question could be, did your tax status change? Or you could change that and say, did you get married or divorced? We didn't get an invitation if you got married. And it's the simple things. Or if you have a question that says, did you have any additional children? You could actually have them, you could say, did you add any dependents this year? And have it where, oh, well, great. We didn't get a birth announcement, so we need that information, please. And it's just a way of making it a little bit less like a chore. And then you don't get that message from the client. Why am I filling out this organizer whenever it's the tax information you should know? Or who doesn't love, if I have to fill out this organizer, what am I paying you to do?
Yeah. I mean that was a big issue for me, especially with the paper organizer. When we're sending, this is why I stopped paper organizers altogether. Like probably about 4 or 5 years before COVID hit, I just stopped paper organizers because one, it was just a pain in the butt to just print them all out and then mail it out. And then the second one is that I don't see many people really filling it out. The most part they fill out is maybe checking the box yes, no for the questionnaire, but everything else they don't even want to look at, because what paper organizer is kind of hard to look at, especially through Lacert. What I was using, it's just a bunch of grids and lines, and it's just kind of hard to really just look at and understand. So most clients never filled out a paper organizer, and they just blindly handed me their tax documents. But I think once we moved over to when I use Carbon, we just created a list where they just upload it. They don't need to fill anything out. And in the questionnaire, we created our own questionnaire through Typeform, which is just another service. But it sounds like with TaxDome, it's already all inside TaxDome.
One of the great questions that I like is, for your income, you can actually just list out the different forms and use check marks. But there is a development that TaxDome is working towards, which is a checklist. So it's something you could send to your client instead of just your organizer. You could send a client checklist that would analyze their previous year's returns. And I believe it's an integration with their AI with Juno, but they are having it where you can have a client organizer and your checklist. So your clients can just sit through the checklist and say, okay, last year I had W-2s. Check, I have that ready to upload. I had 1099Bs, I have those. And it just gives them a glance of what information is needed. Now, the problem with checklist is that when you have a more complex portion with the organizer, such as like a rental property, you can actually with TaxDome have it save parts, which most people we told them, please, if you're setting this up, go ahead and have it where it'll retain some of this information for the next year, and then have a question at the bottom. Has anything changed from your previous year? Does everything look correct? Because the address is not going to change. Their tenant situation is not going to change. So you can have where some of that information is retained. And that's why I really emphasize it's great with organizers to buy these cookie cutter organizers. In fact, TaxDome has a great marketplace where you can buy a pre-made, done for you tax return organizer. However, it's not going to have those pre-filled areas. And if you initially, whenever we sent our tax organizers out to everybody, we told them, fill this out, a lot of this information, because I don't know if Lacert did this, but UltraTax had where it would have most of the information from the prior year available. And if you buy one of the, I don't want to say flaws, but one of the unique features of TaxDome is that if you don't use that organizer and change it for that next year, if you do a new organizer completely and download a new one, you lose that data. The client has to go back in and enter their name, their address, their tax situation, their spouse's information, the kids' information, the rental properties. But you can ask it to save the organizer from one year to the next. And then with the rental properties, you can have it at the bottom, the very bottom of the screen. You can ask it to repeat that section, and it'll repeat and create another organizer for clients with multiple rentals, or clients where perhaps the taxpayer has one Schedule C business and the spouse has a Schedule C business. You can have it where the client can make those sections repeat. Or for people like me, I have 4 kids, and the average organizer only has 2 dependents. So you could have it where you would say at the bottom of the second dependent, add additional dependent. And so then you're able to add as many dependents as you need.
Okay. So you said people could buy organizers from someone else that made it, but that's really not customizable to their firm, right? It's just whatever that firm thought was good, and then you probably would have to go. Can you edit those?
You can edit those because when you're buying it, you're not buying a locked item. You're buying something that you can edit. But as I said before, you're going to lose the stuff that was already previously filled out in yours. So what I have done is I've purchased an organizer and used kind of what I thought was really great questions off of that organizer and used that to make my organizer better.
So what you're saying is that if you're already you already created an organizer template for yourself, if you bought a whole nother one to replace it, the client's going to have to start all over entering in the basic information. But what you can do is just, I guess, update your original organizer and just add in the new questions here and there. That would be better.
Yes. And that's what I recommend absolutely to everyone. And I had a really great group that I met with this past summer, and they said that they sent their organizers to each other because then it gives you a chance to have someone else review your organizer, but it gives you a chance to look at where your organizer may have areas that you want to change.
So you had you knew tax professionals sending it to each other just to kind of cross-check their work and see how good the organizers is and maybe take ideas off from each other?
Yes. One EA that focused in one area of the country, I believe in the Illinois area, sent her organizer to an EA that worked over in Michigan. And the two of them were able to look through each other's organizers and see perhaps that was a better way of phrasing the question than I have. And you really get honest feedback. But I'd still recommend sending it to someone, a good friend who will actually give you feedback.
Yeah.
Let's not torment all of our friends and family too much, but send out to quite a few of them your organizer. Have someone who's not in the industry look at it and say, is this question an appropriate level? One of the best podcasts I've heard lately was an implementation from the AICPA about AI. And the lady that gave the presentation said, if you're concerned of the way that you're phrasing a question, put it into ChatGPT or into Copilot and say, can you rephrase this to the level of a sixth grader? And it will give you a really great insight on how much do you need to adapt some of your questions? How technical are we getting?
Yeah.
Because you and I, if we hear government form, we don't have to be told it's a W-2. However, to the average taxpayer, every IRS interaction is a government form.
Yeah. Going back to the ChatGPT thing, where if you ask AI how to rephrase it, I actually use that a lot too. But I don't just say sixth grader. I like to give ranges, so I can pick and choose. So I'll go like rewrite this so it's third grade level, fifth grade level, and seventh grade level or something like that, right? So then I can just read which one I think is best, and then for each one, I would say, give me 4 examples, 4 different ones for third grade level, 4 different ones for fifth grade level. Just giving me more options to choose from on how to rewrite it. But I definitely wanted to go into how do we build a smarter and simpler organizer.
Start with the basics. Look at your 1040. What are they wanting to know? What's the number one question the IRS wants to know? Did you make money? And if so, how? So if you start, and I believe I call it the top 4. Number 1, what's your personal situation? How's your family life? You want to be able to ask about if there's a spouse, if there's no longer a spouse, if there's a new spouse, if there's any children, if there's dependents. Did you perhaps have mom come to live with you? The average taxpayer does not realize that a parent does not have to live with them to be a dependent. So you need to be able to ask questions that have value, but also you may still have to follow up with questions on that particular area. The second one is income. How are you getting that income? Are you working as a W-2 employee? Are you working for yourself? If you're working for yourself, in what capacity? Are you working with a partner, or are you working have you set up an actual business with the state? So we want to keep each section short, 5 questions or fewer. Then you add the conditional logic. Did you have any rental properties in 2024? Were these short-term, long-term rentals? Was it your personal residence? And you can put all of those 3 questions into one true question. You can have a multiple choice question where they can choose more than one answer. When the question asks, did you have a rental property? And you say yes, the following could be, was your rental property A traditional long-term rental, B, a short-term rental, C, part of your personal residence? And they can check as many or not at all. And if you wanted to, you could add another check mark at the bottom, D, other, and then have a follow-up question where if that person chooses other, then there's a line underneath that says, please explain. And that line of please explain would not appear unless they check mark D. And if they say no, then they can just skip that section and move on. Did you start a business? If yes, who was it? Me or my spouse? Then so on and so forth, to build it to where, did you do any filings with the state? Was it an LLC? Is it a Schedule C business? Or is this perhaps now your client is looking at doing a partnership return or an S Corp, and they're not thinking about it until they start working on this organizer. So keeping what I like to call the 4-section rule, it simplifies the structure, and you can actually make it in TaxDome where if one area you answer yes, then you can actually have another area up here that will say all about my business. And it has a bunch of questions about that business. Or did you make any major purchases of real estate or Bitcoin? That's the big one right now. Cryptocurrency. And then have a section that has the questions that actually apply to your tax situation. Then the third section would be your deductions. Did you have any major medical expense? Did you have any large purchases on taxes? When your organizer asks smarter questions, you don't have to have the lengthy emails back and forth, and your inbox actually stays quieter. You're not having to contact the client so many times to find information that your organizer took care of. Instead of having to have a follow-up question in an email, you're able to send the client an organizer that has that conversation for you. When you set up this organizer, if you set it up conversationally, your clients will actually answer it. They will give you more information. And if they answer a question where they really need to ask your information, you can set the organizer up to let you know that client needs a phone call. They do not simply have all the information to accurately fill out that organizer. If you realize that your clients really needed to send you additional information, there's a great feature called a client request, and you can request information and copy and paste directly from your organizer some of the questions you want clarified, or you can call your client and make the changes in your organizer. Or option C, you can select to unsubmit the organizer, and you can contact the client and say, I really need you to fill this area out. It's really imperative that you have that information so I can accurately complete your tax return. So 2025 has been a really crazy year with this one big, beautiful bill. And a lot of clients have special situations that they're going to be affected by some of the tax laws. And some of these changes for tax laws have, if you had your organizer set up previously and you had these tags in place, you could send that communication out to really hone in on who needs to hear that information and who's affected by this. We use a lot of data mining in the firms that I've worked with. And with data mining, you tend to send out email blast. The wonderful thing about doing your organizer effectively and working on your tags is that you can target the people that need to have that information and send that information over to them versus sending an organizer about energy credits to someone who doesn't even own a house. So you can set this up on a federal level, and there's states that are implementing a lot of energy credits or a lot of different credits based off of legislation in the individual states. You can modify your existing organizer to ask the questions you need to ask. So my first step, go through your organizer, the organizer you've been sending out, or if you don't have one, go to Google and download samples from other companies. AICPA offers a great one. The textbook has a great just PDF version of an organizer. If you want more questions, you can download organizers from other firms. One of my favorite quotes, 2 things in life are guaranteed, death and taxes. Taxes will change. And if your organizer is set up where it will work with tags, this will help you to overall improve your advisory for your clients. Going back to our Schedule C, if you answer, yes, I have a business, you can actually put a place for your client to upload a backup copy of their QuickBooks. Or if they don't have QuickBooks, but perhaps they want you to recreate at the last minute their entire year of bookkeeping, you can have a checklist that will help them to upload anything that you will need to prepare that return instead of that back and forth. And as I said, I believe several times in the podcast, if you structure your organizer correctly and you spend the time to structure it correctly, you'll save the time in email correspondence back and forth, and that 20 to 30 emails throughout the tax season that you're going to spend with that client will be reduced to one or two. Take the time to plan before implementation, because TaxDome is a powerful tool and implementation can be swift, but you need to know what you need to know. And you'll not have those answers until you do a little bit of research. It's one of those situations where you don't know what you don't know until you realize that you don't know it. And that always confused me until I started really working with implementation for software. Really meet with somebody, whether it's me or there's a bunch of really great people out there that have pre-made templates galore. Find somebody that really can help walk you through the aspects of TaxDome as a user. Make notes, get your information together ahead of time. That way, when you go through the implementation, and this is for the new users, when you go through implementation, you already have those answers. You know what you're supposed to say. So when they talk about your pipelines, you understand a pipeline is simply a workflow, and this is how I want it to go through my office. This is who needs to be reminded of a task. So going back to the organizers, one of the main reasons clients get frustrated with organizers is because they're not hearing from you the whole year. So if you are working, like Fuchs says, and advising your clients and making those discussions, having that ongoing relationship with your clients, this organizer can be easily achieved, completed, and it will be just a matter of covering the basics to make sure nothing is being left out.
I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to the flow that we talked about earlier, if I have an employee that's also on TaxDome, we'll automatically notify that employee if it's their turn to take their turn on the work. Like maybe if I was gathering all the documents, I was the one who said, okay, we have all the documents now. It's your turn to say, do the data entry or input it. Will it automatically notify my employees?
If it's set up correctly. If your workflows are set up correctly, yes. Say in your office, there is one person that they are your go-to for rental properties, because we have a lot of firms where there's a person that specializes in certain things. Or like at my previous firm, I was the K1 queen. If there was somebody that had more than 5 K1s, they came to me because I would be able to go through all of the K1s. I believe one of my clients had almost 40 K1s. If we had a tag in there that said that it was included a rental, long-term rental, short-term rental, and then you could use that tag to schedule. And I believe you and I had this conversation before, but not here on the podcast. The if this, then that. If you have it set up where if there's a Schedule E, then that tax return needs to also have a tag of Michelle. Then it should go to Michelle. And so you can use those tags to automate your workflow. You can use the tags to automate your questions. And you can actually use tags even for missing information and have it where if you've reviewed everything and there's information missing, those tags, that is going to be, do you remember pinballs where they had the little levers that went in different directions? These tags can be your little flippers that will send the tax return where it needs to go. And not just tax returns. I know that this entire thing has been about a tax organizer. Everything. You can have where if a client really wants to have an S Corp and you're working on a 2553, you can have that 2553 automated, and you can include even a wiki page, which inside of TaxDome, you and I really need to have like a what does TaxDome have inside of it, they have the ability to have your entire office as wiki pages inside of TaxDome. So if somebody gets a document in front of them and they're not really certain of what to do, they can go to Wiki and say, oh, okay, this is what I need to do. This is the policies and procedures for this.
Quick question.
Uh-huh.
When it comes to the organizer itself, one of the biggest roadblocks that clients or that preparers have is just data or collecting the information, right? Maybe clients will upload 75% of the stuff that they need to upload, but then they forget about the 25%. Does TaxDome do anything when it comes to reminders and chasing down these documents?
TaxDome won't through the organizer, but you can do a client request. So let me go back to what a client request is. A client request is this really great feature inside of TaxDome that is a mini organizer. You can set up templates that would be just simple. You're missing these documents, and then you list them out below and make the client, you could say, have a place for them to upload. And you could say, please upload your K1 from SOS. Please upload your W-2 from ABC Co. And you can actually fill that out. That is something that you would have to go in and identify what information is missing. But then you could send that template to them and also have it where once they trigger that submit button, then it would automate and go back in to get checked again.
So it can be automated where I don't have to constantly resend this template out.
Right. And you can have reminders, but you can say how often you want the organizers reminded and how many times and all of everything. I mean, this software, you can customize every aspect of it.
Oh, that's good to know. And also, one of the headaches when I first sign onto a new tech something for my firm is figuring out how do I import client information into there? Because I'm so used to working off of my tax program itself that how do we import client data when we first sign up for TaxDome into TaxDome?
Well, they have a CSV file that you can download. One of my first videos that I'm hoping to post on YouTube is how to clean up your client list so that when you import into TaxDome, you can make your TaxDome client list the way you want it to be. And this again goes back to knowing how you want your company to run. I have two people that I'm working with, and one of them, she knows she has a few clients that absolutely will not change between a client 1040 portal and a business portal. So instead, she has one portal for the client that she puts everything into. But there's another client that I'm working with, and every one of her clients she wants on a separate portal so that if you and I individually are her clients, we have our own individual portals. But if we own a business together, we both have access to that portal. So this goes back to setting everything up exactly how you want it to be. So you start with your Excel spreadsheet and you have everything ready to go. Once you're ready, you import that client list into TaxDome, and you can even set your tags during that time. So if you are exporting like out of Drake or Lacert, you can export and have where your clients are set up with the businesses and the entity types. That tag could be immediately applied. Then once you pull that information up, the next step is getting your documents over. Now you can either upload to the cloud through the web browser, or they have a virtual drive that you can install off of their Windows app, and you would be able to use that with your local drive and upload directly into the drive as you want. However, this goes back to that pre-planning. Make sure you have your folder templates set up correctly first, because a lot of people, they have no idea what we're talking about whenever I say folder templates. You have some documents that are permanent. Back in the wee old days, whenever we had these folders with the information on the top, a lot of firms would say, we're going to save a tab for each year. And then the front is going to be our permanent or our client documentation stuff that has our document notes on it. You want to know, how do you want this folder set up? Do you want it set up by year? And then inside that year, do you want it set up by document types? I recommend, if nothing else, have client correspondence, supporting documents, final product, just those 3 simple ones. But you need to have this set up. And this is where I really advocate. And this is what I'm going to send you a list of things that you need to be prepared to answer before you get to that point of talking to TaxDome. And if you've already implemented TaxDome, guess what? You can apply these folder templates rather quickly. It's just a matter of getting yourself organized how it works for you. Because one client may want everything set up like in a numerical way. We have a client that likes everything set up by O1 is this, O2 folder is this. Then there's another client that just says, I want them alphabetically. Just put them all in there. They'll alphabetize. That's great. I don't care. Knowing, how do you want this? If you could walk in tomorrow and you had your ideal office, how do you want this to go? But it also needs to be realistic, because is your workflow now? How are you functioning?
Do you find it hard? People might have their workflow maybe in a process doc or something like that, or maybe even in their head. And how do we put it onto TaxDome where it works as well? Does that take a lot of work, working it step by step?
I have a great spreadsheet that I work with my clients. The spreadsheet goes step by step, stage by stage. Okay, so the first step is welcome. Welcome to TaxDome. Send that email out. Let your clients know that you have a new portal. What else do you want to let them know? This is the way where I want you to send documents. I want you to have access to it. How to set up your multi-factor. Put a video in there of how that multi-factor should go. Often people get very confused when they're given information, but they're only given part of that information. They can't find those answers themselves. TaxDome has a bunch of wonderful resources that you can white label and put your information on, and then pass to your clients as if you had created this wonderful tool and given to them. And that's an amazing thing. AI, ChatGPT, you're not doing client specific stuff. You're doing a generalized format. Use it as a tool to walk your clients through what those initial stages are in setup. Your client is going to have to set up their portal. They're going to have to set up their multi-factor, and they're going to have to download the app, which, by the way, best app ever. TaxDome has some great apps it can capture pictures and really make it where your clients, it is so easy for your clients to upload. We had an 80-year-old lady that she rocked it. She sat there, went through, answered her entire organizer, took pictures of her stuff, uploaded it, and was done. So it's the resistance to change, not really the difficulty to change. Yeah. So if you're able to overcome that resistance to change with your clients, the number one way is make it easy.
Yeah, I like that idea, especially when you incorporate the dynamic part of it, the conversational part of it. I mean, from your experience, do you feel clients are more willing to fill out these organizers once you change it so it's more dynamic and conversational?
I really do. And I feel like whenever your client feels like you're having more of a conversation with them rather than an interrogation where they're simply uploading documents and answering, yes, I did this. Yes, I did that. If they really feel like they're being engaged with this conversation and there's a purpose to it, then they're more willing to answer it. When you go to the doctor's office and you see on here, Have you ever had this? Have you ever had that? Have you ever had this? You just kind of zone out. And so many times, and I'm very guilty of this because I'm going with several people. Whenever my family would go to a new doctor and we would have to fill out for 6 of us all the information, you get to the point where you're just like, no, 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 just selecting it and going through. So I completed the paperwork. I may not have answered it correctly because I get in the back with the doctor and I say, oh, by the way, my son has this medical condition. My daughter has this medical condition. And we're coming to you today because I have this with my finger, and that's stuff that should have been answered on that questionnaire. And if you're just asking a bunch of questions and it's not conversational, your clients are going to zone out just the same.
Yeah, I agree with you because I think what I found was that clients were just answering no because this is a standard no, no, no. But once it gets to that section where it's asked about foreign accounts, they're not even looking at the question. They're just filling out no. And it turns out they do have a foreign account, which we have to file an F bar for, which is a big deal if we don't file it. But in their head, they just think everything's no because everything prior to that is no. So it's just, to them, they're just kind of just checking off the boxes to check off the box.
So that's where you go into that being one of the 5 questions. And this is really goes to what are the 5 most important questions? Number 1, did you have money? Did you have any income? And then check all that apply and have a list of 15 to 20 things. That way they can go through, they'll answer 15 questions out of one question if it's phrased correctly. Number 2, did you have any foreign money this year? Did you have any that needs to be converted? And then during your decision tree, another great thing I love about TaxStone, during your decision tree, if you say that you ascertain, yes, they need a F bar and you make it trigger to an F bar, you can set it up where when that moves into that next stage, it actually uploads an F bar spreadsheet for the client to fill out. So then you're not having to email that over to them later. You can say, please fill this out with your balances at the end of each month so we can prepare your tax return.
So you can actually have it, you could upload a PDF or some kind of file in there. Usually like say an Excel file, if like they say they have a rental, they don't have a profit and loss, then we could just do like a simple Excel template that has income and expenses for their rentals. And they could just fill that out and then upload it back.
Yes. And so then they don't have to sit there in the middle of their organizer and fill that out. You could have one of your questions saying, would you rather answer questions here or would you like us to send you a copy of your Excel? And then if they want, yes, I'd like a copy of my Excel, have it set up where a trigger for that Excel goes through and then that Excel gets added to their portal. Then whenever it gets to that next stage, the client will get a notification. Your firm has uploaded a file to your portal. And all of that's done automatically without you having to lift a finger. And so that's 5 minutes of your time. But if you have 12 clients with that, that's an hour that you've gotten back just from one question.
That's a really nice feature. So setting all this up as a first time user of TaxStone, how much time do you think should be invested in creating all the dynamic and conversational piece of the organizer?
I estimate that it should take so my first adaptation of an organizer, because I was using one off the internet, I was using the one from the tax book, and I was using UltraTax's organizer. My first adaptation took me a couple of days, but that's because I was planning everything out so it would decision tree. And a great tool for that would be OneNote. OneNote is wonderful because you can make that little bitty screen go bigger and bigger and bigger. Or Excel, we're all Excel nerds. Get your questions, just line them all up and then drag and drop them to where they make sense in that questionnaire and have it where a couple of those sections in the front are maybe only 5 wide. And then you can take the smaller sections and turn that into your subcategories. If they answer yes, then I want this to show up. If they answer no, and then it helps you to kind of visually, because you would not believe the amount of accountants that are visual people. So if you can visually do it, or you can even do it something like Post-it notes on the wall and really just sit there and figure out, where do you want things to go? How do you want this to shift? And spend the time, you will regain it tenfold because you'll have actual questions that the clients will answer.
Exactly. So you're just by investing, you said it took two days or so when you first did it, but you're kind of pulling it
Yes.
from all different parts, right?
Right.
But if you're able just to spend a day just organizing your thoughts, organizing how you think it should look, and maybe the next day is actually putting it into the system and then actually sending it out to test it out to make sure that it works. I think that's probably around maybe 3 days, but definitely spending that 3 days will save you from a lot of stress during tax season, especially.
Well, and once you have your organizer built, you can adapt it throughout the year. And this is a one-time thing. As I said, with TaxDome, you're going to change that organizer to hone it to fit what you need next. So when all the new organizers come out for the new year, like 2025, we're going to have all of this stuff from one big, beautiful bill. So these additional questions, we can just kind of slide those in where they're needed on our existing structures. So that first time is going to be painful. Maybe spend a solid week on it. But after that pain point is gone, then it's just a matter of maintaining what you've built, because you've built this wonderful foundation. And then if you have a problem, okay, so say you and I are talking about the F bar. Well, midway through the tax season, we realize that there's a strategic shift with F bars, and we really need to let our clients know. We can update that organizer and have it where any organizers that are not submitted can be updated. So the clients won't even know that you went in there and updated it, but you're able to refresh it and get it without having to delete it and then have a re-upload, a client start over. They can actually work on the good copy, if you will.
So it's nice to know that you can just kind of add to it for the following year and the following year after, especially if there's any tax law changes. But what about someone that maybe got tax dome last year and they used the default organizer? How is it
Let's,
easy? Is it easy to start a whole new one, or do they work off the default one and add it slowly?
I really recommend change what you have, because the CRM components that are going to be, you can move and modify those questions, and you can modify certain situations, drag and drop a lot of the areas and modify it in a way that maybe your client has to only put in maybe 10% instead of having to start over from the beginning.
Okay. And then, we talked about how mainly the organizer is for taxes, but you also mentioned that it could be used for other things. One thing that comes to mind is like onboarding, not onboarding, is
Oh,
maybe
definitely
this,
onboarding.
onboarding. Yeah, right. How about
Yeah,
discovery calls where we need to see, let's say it's for bookkeeping and we need to give them a quote. Would that be a good way to collect the documents in order to get a quote?
definitely. That would be an excellent way. Now that they do have a component on TaxDome that where you can put wouldn't say a complete organizer, but you can ask a lot of questions and onboard based off of your questions to which workflows you really want to add that client to. But whenever you meet with that client the first time and you send the organizer, you can send a link out and get that person set up to a certain degree whenever you're sending them, right after you send them the calendar invite. One of the workflows I'm working for right now, I'm working on for my own firm, is that whenever a client books an appointment with me for a discovery call, if you will, then I can immediately add them to a certain level into TaxDome and put them on a pipeline that is onboarding. And so that will automate which I use Calendly for my automation for my appointment, but they're going to get the notifications and reminders about that upcoming meeting, but they're also going to get a notification that that they need to have this organizer filled out where I have some of their basic information ready to go. And then once I meet with them, I move them to the next stage and it says, yes, thank you for joining us. We definitely want your work and we think that it's a good fit. You think it's a good fit. We need you to upload 3 years of tax returns. We need you to upload this, that, and the other and have that checklist and have it where all I have to do is drag it from one spot to the other, or I can set it up where if I check it as a completed task, then it'll carry on through that pipeline.
Well, that's nice to know. So from pretty much beginning, when they're not really officially a client yet, they're just asking questions. We give them a quote that could be one set of, like say, an onboarding checklist, and
Right.
then you can move that client over to the next an actual onboarding checklist once they want to be your client, and then move that same client to the next thing, which is like, okay, let's prepare your tax return.
I like breaking things.
Hmm.
I know that's going to sound really strange, but you can use these organizers for so many more things than people have ever thought of. You can use the organizer for business formation. You can use it for helping your clients to figure out what kind of entity they need to be on, for employing their children. I mean, there is no limit to what you can use these organizers for. Anytime you need to ask the client a series of questions and you need certain documentation or answers, and you want to make it, you find that you're constantly having these questions, like you were saying with the foreign income, you can actually set it up where you can fill out the entire 2555 based off of your organizer for that questionnaire. If that's the client need, if you find that a lot of your clients are doing that and you're having to fill it out, you can use an client organizer for your due diligence.
Okay. Now, let's just say someone follows all this advice. They created the dynamic organizer. It's conversational. What's next after they perfected the organizer part?
Send it to your clients and listen to their feedback. If your staff or yourself, if you're getting the same question over and over, maybe that's not the best phrasing for that question. And maybe it's something you need to change. You don't need to wait until the end of the year. Go ahead and change it right now. And if you're doing that work throughout the year, because it's 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, and then at the end of the year, it's just a matter of adding any new questions that have changed based off of tax law.
Just from our overall conversation, what I gathered was that, one, the time investment is going to be really important because we shouldn't use the cookie cutter default template that they provide. Definitely, we want to make it dynamic because that's a important feature that TaxDome has.
Right.
You talked about making it conversational, which I don't think a lot of people talk about because they probably tend to just want to ask the question directly just as a normal question. But for you to make it conversational, make it a little bit more engaging for the client to read. But I think just trying to incorporate the dynamic conversational part is a time investment in itself. And you're saying
Well,
2 days or so would be good.
well, also, it's a fine line you have to walk between making sure it's conversational and fits compliance. So there is a fine line, but you should be able to work with that. And if you're just starting out, you can find a lot of resources online and it may work for you. And then once you found those resources, you can copy and paste. There's no new ideas. It's just adaptations of previously really great ideas. We work together. We're a really great accounting community. And I haven't met anybody who says, oh, don't copy my organizer. I've had a lot of people whenever I mentioned, because I just recently went out on my own and I said, I'm going to be starting out on my own. Well, let me send you a template for this. Let me send you a checklist for this. Our community as a whole is so wonderful. We work together and we're not, I guess the buzzword right now is gatekeeping ideas. We really want to share with others. So if you find something on that someone else is doing that you really would like to implement, implement it. Ask that person, hey, I work with you, and I'd like to really like to modify your template to make it more mine. Do you have any problem with it? A lot of people will say, go for it.
And you mentioned the time investment of maybe even a week, but I think if they had someone like you to guide them and work through the organizer specifically for their firm, I think that would be very beneficial, right? We could probably cut the time down by quite a lot.
My first organizer that I did for someone was just the input part, not actually creating it, but just getting all of the conditionals together. It was 8 hours of me sitting there working through it. But the last one that I did, it was 3 hours with all of the conditions. And there was a lot because it was a very extensive and very complex organizer. However, for a basic, simple one, it can be done under 2 hours. If you're working with someone who's done it before, who knows where those points are that need to be adjusted, where you need to put those conditional formatting in and the tags. But it's a matter of if you're working with somebody and you're organized and you're ready to go, it's a very painless process.
Yeah, so I would love to learn more about how you would be able to help other firms out with this because I think it's a big time saver. Especially, it can be a little overwhelming if you're trying to navigate this yourself. I know for me, when I was doing carbon, I actually spent about 3 months just fully dedicated to carbon. That include training my team on it. But it was very overwhelming to feel like I was kind of on my own. So once carbon signed me up, they kind of just let me go, right? And it's like, where do I find this guidance, right? And for you, knowing how to use TaxDome already, and I'm assuming you already have your set templates that you could actually customize, whether it fits certain firms or not a firm. I think reaching out to someone that experienced in this and has already created these dynamic checklists for the organizer would just be instrumental to making sure that the organizer is set up correctly for the next
It
tax season.
Well, it really is great to work with somebody that has been through this. I've waded through the thickets, if you will. I've navigated through this water multiple times, and I know what has worked and where there were problems. And having that foresight really helps to understand where your organizer would go. Anybody that would like to reach out to me, I'm Michelle at idccpa.com. I'd love to work with you and see what I can do to help guide you through this so that the whole process is a lot easier for you. And once that implementation done, you'll see the rewards in additional time in your week, in your schedule, and more profitability, less stress for your clients and your staff.
We talked about how TaxDome you could help set with the organizer, but I'm assuming you could set up way more than just the
Everything.
organizer. So I'm not sure what the finish is with when it comes to TaxDome, but there's probably, I remember you mentioned pipelines, that we could set up as well. So you could
And
help them with that.
my video series is going to be coming out soon. If you want to look on YouTube, it is going to be Michelle Idsi CPA, and I will be having different videos that will take you through the process from setting it up, prepping your client list, what points really matter to you, what I recommend as far as implementing it. I really want to make this a whole series and then actually using it, having videos on here that you could guide your staff to and say, instead of me showing you 15 times how to use this software, let me just let you go through this playlist, and it will show you from step A down to step Z, how do you use this and implement it? That way your valuable time isn't tied up teaching your staff how things are. Your staff will still have to refer to what your workflows are. However, those pieces of each workflow, that will be available in a video series that you can guide your staff to.
Wow, that's good to have because I know training staff it takes up a lot of time. And as a firm owner, we don't really have that time to train staff adequately. We try to just brush it over as quickly as we can, just to say that we trained them, but really it's not effective to a point where the staff actually fully understands it. So I think with your guide, with your YouTube videos, will definitely help them out. Is there anything else that you would like to share?
I am working on a series of white labeled videos that I'm going to offer for people to be able to use. And then they would be able to send that out as part of their portals into TaxDome, so they could walk their clients through certain things, such as how am I supposed to how am I supposed to sign an e-signature? How do I access my documents? And you could send out not only the videos, but you can send out a link to your videos through an email if your clients can't even access the portal. So those videos will be coming out, and I will have those available for purchase where you can put your labeling on them and send them along, and it be something that you can customize to your brand.
Perfect. Thank you, Michelle. This has been very helpful, very informative with TaxDome. I definitely learned a lot, especially from someone that's never used TaxDome. And I'm hoping that this video is going to really help other tax preparers understand that, hey, adding a new tech stack it can be intimidating, but it's going to be very helpful along the way, and especially with someone that using your guidance and everything that you provided information wise will definitely help people get started with. If they're not using TaxDome yet, then it's something that they definitely should be considering.
Yes. And I really feel like having somebody to guide you that's been through the process will be instrumental in making sure that your implementation of the software is seamless. And if I do my job correctly, your clients won't notice anything other than the improvements in the quality of their service.
Perfect. Thank you, Michelle.
Thanks.